What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the overall markets. I'm going to break down what President Trump just said about the markets. That's very important. He gave a speech about the stock market and also what was happening with these trade deals. I'm also going to break down the economic calendar, which caused a lot of volatility for the markets. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. Anyways, the market's trading sideways. We gapped up very nicely after we had some new tariff rates for different products that were announced. And then that caused the market to gap up. But then the move did not last as the market came down to fill this gap. We started to dip because of the fact that inflationary expectations were high at 3.6% above the 3.3% forecast. Then we saw the market bounced. It bounced after President Trump gave a speech, came back down, and we actually closed kind of flat, a little bit in the green for SPY, the QQQ, and the others. But the question is, what's going to affect us moving forward? That's why I really want to break down what's happening with President Trump. He's been saying some very important things causing volatility in the markets. I'll break down what he said, and then I'll talk about the charts later on. One more reminder, the market was kind of flat today. We had some tickers in the red like Amazon, Meta, even Tesla was kind of flat, but other tickers were in the green if you look at like big tech stocks like Apple and Google. We also saw a lot of volatility that was coming amidst what was being said. As a reminder, on Friday, the mainstream media and many of President Trump's advisors and his commerce secretary were all saying that there's going to be exemptions for smartphones, computers, laptops, and semiconductors. But then President Trump announced this yesterday. He said that nobody's getting off the hook for the unfair trade balances and non-monetary tariff barriers that other countries have used against us, especially not China, which by far treats us the worst. That's what President Trump said. He said that there is no tariff exemption announced on Friday. Instead, these products are subject to the existing 20% tariffs, and they're going to be moving to a different tariff bucket. He called it fake news, then mentioned there's going to be an investigation that is going on the semiconductor industry. So keep that in mind. That's what President Trump said. And then we had even more updates that came out from him. When talking about a trade deal, he said that he doesn't blame China. He actually blamed this on former President Joe Biden. He said, I don't blame China. I don't blame Vietnam when talking about their meetings. And he said that I see the meetings today. Is that wonderful? That's a lovely meeting. We're meeting like trying to figure out how do we screw the United States of America, he said. Then he was trying to see that we shouldn't forget the European Union was formed to just do that. The European Union was formed to hurt the United States and on trade. And he went on about that. So, he was saying the same things that we typically hear him say. And then he had a lot of quotes that came out. I want to break those down. President Trump mentioned that I helped Tim Cook of Apple in the whole business. I don't want to hurt anybody, but the end result is we're going to get to the position of greatness for our country. Then he said that we had the largest gain in stock market history in every single category last week. That's what President Trump said last week, about last week, essentially. Then he said that the European Union is working on a trade deal with the US and that progress is being made. He also mentioned that Iran wants to deal with us, but he doesn't know how. Then he said they cannot have a nuclear weapon. Iran must give up its stream of nuclear weapons or face harsh responses. Then he said that he's looking to help car companies. Car companies need a little bit of time, and he's a very, very flexible person. So President Trump said that he's very flexible with these tariffs. He doesn't want to hurt anybody. He helped Tim Cook recently, and the EU has to come to the table if they're trying to. Then President Trump mentioned that the EU is taking advantage of the US and that he had a very good conversation with Tim Cook to fix a lot of different things. He met up with El Salvador's president, and then he said that China and Vietnam are meeting to figure out how they're going to hurt the US. The EU doesn't take our products or cars. I will solve the Iran problem. Nvidia's announcement on building AI servers came because of the election and tariffs, and all I have to do is impose a tariff. We don't make our own pharmaceuticals. We will tariff imported pharmaceuticals. The pharmaceutical tariffs are coming in the not too distant future, and the stock market's already up today. He said the stock market's doing very well. The markets are very strong since they're getting used to the tariffs. And he said that he's very optimistic about these deals. So he's saying that he's not really trusting China is what he's essentially saying. He doesn't like the fact that they're meeting up with Vietnam, and he thinks that they're going to try to screw over the US. But he mentioned that he believes the US will come out on top and he's going to continue to negotiate. He also said he's very flexible. He wants to form deals with the EU and China. So he went on about that, and he did say that a deal should be coming very soon. He did say last week he was very confident in a deal with China to come quite soon as well. So that's some important news. Besides that, we had the EU announcing they want to actually trade more with China instead. So instead of trading more with the US, they want to open their arms to China. China respond by saying that they're ready to work with the EU and promote a sound and steady development of the Chinese and EU relations. So that's more news that's coming out. It's not the best for the US, but I don't think it's affecting the market too much, hopefully. But President Trump has been saying that he thinks that, these other countries are meeting together and trying to screw the US. That's his opinion. I'm not saying he's right or wrong, but that is, there is an aspect of the fact that and there's an aspect of the fact that these countries are trying to like meet up with one another, maybe trade more with one another, and try to avoid tariffs with the U.S. So he is saying that he's concerned about that. He's not happy about it. So he did express his dismay towards that. But at the end of the day, he's still continuing to say that the stock market is doing well and that big deals should be coming nonetheless. Okay, so that's like a nice update about the tariffs so far. Heading into tomorrow, it's going to be Tuesday, April 15th, 2025. In the morning, we have export and import prices coming out. Then we have a bunch of Fed speakers such as Barkin speaking at 11:35 a.m., and that's pretty much it. Then we also have some more news. Tomorrow is going to be Tuesday as we have Bank of America, Citigroup, Johnson Johnson, PNC announcing their earnings. We also have United Airlines and a bunch of others after market close. On Wednesday, we have ASML, US Bancorp, and a few more. On Thursday, we have TSMC and Netflix all announcing earnings, so keep that in mind. On top of this, the market's extremely fearful still, but we're seeing some buyers trying to defend simultaneously. We saw a sideways day as extreme fear makes up the majority of sentiment. The put to call option ratio is continuing to fall, which is what's helping the market balance to some extent because we're seeing puts being closed and a little bit of hedging that's going on. With that being said, what do I think is going to happen to the charts? So when we look at SPY, you guys can see that we have we're forming like a large cup and handle like structure right here. So if you look at this, it kind of looks like that, which is technically bullish. Even the 4 hour is looking a little bit more in favor of bulls. But before we get a bullish move, I just want to say that we're consolidating right now. I think we might see a continuation like this when you look at ES and the others. So just to be very frank, if we lose 529, we're looking for a dump back down below 520. And if we end up breaking past the resistance right here around this 542 area, we're looking for an attempt to get back up towards these highs at 547, and eventually 550 above that. So those are your bullish and bearish cases. In my opinion, I think what's going to happen is we consolidate a bit, just like how we did today. Heading into tomorrow, we might push like this, consolidate in this range for some time. And as long as we don't lose major support, even if we do get a small little dip to the lower 530s, we might just trade sideways between the low 530s and the low 540s, kind of going back and forth in this range before we eventually start to push towards later on in the week with Jerome Powell's speech on Wednesday, where some other factors may actually help this start to push upwards. So I do think that we're making a move like this. I do think we should most likely push higher as long as we don't end up losing 524. I think the odds favor that gap fill for 555 to eventually 565. But before we do that, we're consolidating right now. We're kind of just trading sideways. So I presume we're just going to trade sideways for the time being. But then there's going to be a bullish move coming to 555 and eventually 568. So keep that in mind. We do have bullish targets, but there might be some consolidation in the beginning first. So keep that in mind. That is what I'm anticipating for now. On the QQQ, we have a very similar setup. So on the QQQ, we're also trading sideways right now. We're only up 0.68%. But keep in mind, we have these two supports at 448 and 452. So if you're a bear, you want to see us lose 448. If that fails us, we're looking for 443. And if we lose that support, I do anticipate we're going to be dumping down to the low 430s. If we're bullish, you want to see us essentially break past 460. If we break this, we're looking for an attempt for like 466. And then, if that breaks, this is going to be our next target right here, right? All the way up to about 475 if we break this resistance. So in my opinion, I think what's going to likely happen is we continue to trade sideways like this. I think there's a very, very good chance that we see another move like this tomorrow where we kind of push for the low 460s. We dip back down towards the low 450s. We kind of trade sideways like this for some time. There could be a small dip even to reach us like 450 or so, but then ultimately, I do think we eventually reaccumulate and we start pushing for this like 475 target like this. That's what I'm basically anticipating for now. Some sideways price action in this range before we see some upside because of the fact that we are holding this key fib level. We're trying to make higher lows, and this setup is like a cup and handle. So I do think that this will likely lead to more upside. So we might see some consolidation first before we see a break to the upside towards the later part of this week by Thursday or Friday. That's what I think is most likely going to come for the time being for the QQQ as well. For the IWM, we have a very similar setup. We're making higher lows. Obviously, it depends on the news. So in case we lose 183, if that happens, we could be dumping back down towards 178. But if we end up breaking past 188, we're looking for an attempt to push back towards this gap fill right here towards 190. And if we break that, we're looking for 192 as our potential target. So that's what's happening so far. So we have this left shoulder here, just like this, a head, and then a right shoulder forming. And then this could lead to more upside if we continue to break out. So that's looking like the more bullish case. And I think there's a good chance that's what's going to happen so far. So notice that we're not breaking out yet because we're in a range between 188 and 183. We're kind of going back and forth like this and this and this for now. But there's going to be a good chance we try to push higher for like 192 as time goes on if we see some buyers defend. So we'll just have to see how it goes. There's a nice inverse hand shoulders like structure. I do think we try to go higher eventually, but we might consolidate between 183 and 188 first before we start pushing for 200. So look for some consolidation before we push for 192, then 200. That's what I anticipate for now, but there might be a push coming later. Now, ES looks a little bit weaker. I wouldn't be surprised if this actually pulls back just a little bit towards 53.68, and we have to hold this. If we lose this, we could be dipping back down towards 52.50. And if we get back above like 55.25, we're looking for an attempt to push back up to 56.15. And then if we break that, we're going to be going much higher. So what I think is going to happen is that we kind of push down a little bit towards 53.60. If that fills us, we could even see like 5,300 or so, and we just kind of consolidate for a bit. But then later on, I do think we try to push for 5,600 or above like this. I'm anticipating a move like this on ES and for many other stocks. So watch this very closely as we're trying to make higher lows. So I think that there might be some consolidation here between the 54.50 and 53.50 area, kind of going back and forth like this. We might be looking for some upside as time goes on towards the 5,600. So give this some time. That's going to be the most likely possibility. So keep that in mind. For the QQQ, we have a very similar setup. We're kind of rejecting right here as well. So keep that in mind. We could be dipping back down towards 18,650, and we'll see if we bounce or not off of this. If we do bounce off this, we might be looking for an attempt to go higher, back up towards 19,600, which is where I think we might be going later on. But watch your levels, right? So if we lose 18,250, we're looking for a dump back down to 17,500. If we break past 19,250, we're also looking for a push for 19,600. My prediction, however, is that we dip towards 18,600. We kind of consolidate first, and then we eventually try to get bought back up for the 19,600s for a move like this as the most likely possibility. We are looking a bit more bullish with the cup and handle like structure, but before we break out, there might be a small pullback back down to about 18,600 and some consolidation before we see some upside. For Bitcoin, we have a nice double bottom here. If we break past 86,000, we're looking for an attempt to push towards 87,500. If we lose 83,874, we're looking for a dump to 82,700. So watch those levels just to be safe. For the time being, we also have a double bottom that's forming here, and we're trying to make higher lows. So I wouldn't be surprised if we kind of consolidate like this on Bitcoin. I wouldn't be surprised if we even retest like 83 to 82,000 first, and then we start to bounce like this to get back up towards, this high up here towards 87,000. May happen by Thursday or Friday, maybe after Jerome Powell gives his speech on Wednesday. So we might be looking for more upside. May consolidate first before we get the upside move, so keep that in mind. Tesla's looking a bit more bullish because we got a decent close that's flat. And we do have an inverse hand and shoulders. So if you want to be a big bull, you want to see Tesla basically get back above 260. If that holds, I'm looking for 265 plus as our potential target towards 270. If we're bearish, you want to see us essentially lose 241. If that fails us, we're looking for a dip back down towards 230. My anticipation is that Tesla's going to consolidate in this range right here for some time before we get the upside move. I think that's more probable. So we might be looking for a dip tomorrow to like 245, a bounce to 255, and some consolidation as well. Notice how we've been doing this for the last 2 days. And then later on, I do hope we try to get back to 265 like this. So I might be looking for a move like this for like a day or two before we see some upside, hopefully by the end of the week. For Nvidia, we have a left shoulder, we have a head, then we have a right shoulder that's forming, but we haven't really gotten the breakout quite yet. So if you're a bear, you want to see us lose this 107 area. If that fails us, we dip back down towards the low 100s. If you're a bull, you want to see Nvidia basically break past the 116 area that's almost near the high of the day today. This is at the 200 EMA. If we break that, we're looking for the 120s. My prediction would be that we trade sideways. We might be dipping to 107, and we'll see if we bounce from there, kind of consolidate for some time, and hopefully we get bought back up to start pushing for the 120s. Once again, forming an inverse head and shoulders. There's a good chance we do try to go higher as long as we don't lose like 99, so keep that in mind. That's going to be one of the most likely possibilities. For Apple, Apple's also doing a good job at getting bought back up right here, but we do have a gap to fill, so I don't think we're ready to bounce yet. To be a bull, you want to break and hold above 210. My prediction on Apple was that it would test this blue line right here, this previous support becoming resistance. Notice that we actually touched it, then we got rejected off of it, so it was very close, and we did call that almost to a T. So with that being said, you want to break the blue line at 208 to be bullish. If we lose 200, we're looking for 195. If that fills us, we turn bearish and we're looking for a dump. My prediction is that we fill this gap. We actually dip towards 195 to 198. Then we see a rebound attempt like this as we have an inverse head and shoulders. So keep that in mind. That's going to be very key, and that's going to be very important for how we end up continuing to move. For Netflix, it looks bullish to me. There's a left shoulder, a head, and then a right shoulder. If we manage to break past 955, we're looking for an attempt to push for basically 980. If we end up losing essentially 917, we're looking for this to reject and start dumping. So there's a left shoulder here, right? This is forming some consolidation. We're forming a head just like this. Then we have a right shoulder forming, and this could be looking for basically the 990 area. Now, that's the bullish case. If you want to be bearish, like I said, you want to see us lose 917. If that fails us, we dump below 900. But I think that this is looking very bullish. Nice inverse head and shoulders. The setup is quite good. I just want to see us hold above 950. If we do that, I think we easily rocket to about 980 plus by next week, if not by the end of this week. So it looks bullish. Very nice setup, but we need confirmation for us to break and hold above 950. And I think this thing is going to set off for the upside. So I anticipate more upside later on. For MSTR, we're looking like we're just very choppy right now, but it did push higher as you predicted. So I wouldn't be surprised if we kind of consolidate a bit near 299. We might consolidate a bit before it pushes for like 320. Bullish setup, but we have to see if we could hold above 300. Might retest it before it tries to go higher, but it looks a bit more bullish to me. Very sideways price action on Celsius, going back and forth and back and forth. It might retest 36.5, and we'll see if it bounces or not. But I think that we slowly uptrend like this and ride our 20 EMA up towards like 39 to 40. I think it's slowly uptrending, so keep that in mind. Supermicro is kind of flat, a little bit like Nvidia. It tried to bounce and just got a rejection because of the news. So with that being said, what do I think is going to happen from here? It looks a little bit weak here. It might dip towards 32. We'll have to see if that holds. If not, I see us dipping towards like 31.5, and we'll see if we bounce or not. I anticipate downside's looking a bit more probable on this as we're making a lower high here, and we're below our key EMAs. So we're going to be looking for essentially 31.5 as a potential target, and we'll see if we bounce. For Palantir, inverse head and shoulders as well. We have a gap to fill down here, so there's a potential play right here. We might be dipping to fill this gap towards 88. If that fails us, we're looking for 85, so there might be a bit of a pullback coming before we see some buyers try to defend. So make sure you watch your levels just to be safe. For Rivian, it's the same thing, a nice accumulation-like structure. However, I want to see us get back above 12.5 to continue to push. If we break that, we're looking for 13. If we end up losing 11.5, we're looking for a dip back down, but I'm anticipating some upside. So I might be looking for an attempt to push for 12.5 or above, so give this some time. For SoFi, we're looking decent. We're actually consolidating right here. If we end up breaking past 11.3, we're looking for an attempt to push for basically the 12s. If we end up losing 10.2, we're looking for a dump back down. So I anticipate that this is going to consolidate before we see some upside. For AMD, if we end up losing 91, we're looking for a dip back down towards 88. And if we end up breaking past 97, we're looking for a push towards 100. Plus, I anticipate some downside, might be retesting 103. Not 103, 91 first. 91 might be retested before we see an attempt to rebound like this. So we'll see if that ends up being the case. For ARM, we're also forming a nice accumulation-like structure, nice inverse head and shoulders. If we lose 99.6, we're looking for this thing to dump back down towards 89. As long as we hold this, we could consolidate and slowly try to push back up for about 115. So we'll have to see how it goes. For Coinbase, we're kind of stuck right here. As long as we hold above 170, we're looking for an attempt to uptrend for 185. If we lose 170, we're looking for a dip back down towards 161. With this left shoulder, head, and then the right shoulder forming, I anticipate this is going to consolidate before trying to push back up to 185. The setup is bullish, but we need some time to see if this could get a breakout. For Amazon, we're not looking too good. We're trying to form an inverse head and shoulders, but there's weakness here. We're below our EMA, so we need to reclaim 184 to bounce back up to the higher levels. Unfortunately, this is just consolidating, so see how it's trying to hold this 178 area. It might retest that, not looking too good right now. It might kind of consolidate like this first. I hope we get back above 184 to really bounce, but I just see some consolidation. Might see a retest of 178, and then we'll have to see how it goes. Meta looks a little bit weaker. We might be retesting essentially 520. If that fails us, we could be dipping back down towards 505 before we see some buyers defend. So I do think it might dip a little bit towards 520, and we'll see if some buyers step in. So look for some downside for tech, such as like Meta. Microsoft's had some tough resistance at 392. If that breaks, we look for 400. If it doesn't break, we might be dipping for about 380. So look at 380 as our potential target, and we'll see how it reacts. It still could be forming an inverse head and shoulders, even if we do retest 380, and we'll see what the reaction happens to be like. For Google, we're also in the middle. Unfortunately, it's consolidating as well. We want to see it get and hold above like 164 to continue to push. If not, we're looking for this 157 to 160 area as our support, and we'll see if it bounces as we have this inverse head and shoulders here. So we'll just have to see how it goes. For GameStop, we're on a very, very nice uptrend. As long as we don't lose 25, we're actually favoring the upwards direction for 28. For AIMS, you have a double bottom here. As long as we hold 2.8, we're going to see if this could bounce or not. Otherwise, we're not looking too good. So watch to see what happens at this 2.8 area. We'll have to see if we hold it or not. For DJT, we're consolidating. I want to see it get back above 18.93 to continue to bounce. Otherwise, it's also trading sideways. The VIX looks weak here, might be dipping towards 22.5. We'll see what the reaction happens to be. We have resistance around 38, so I do think it might be dipping towards 26.24, then maybe even 22.4 just to see what the reaction is. The 10 year is kind of dipping here. We have this gap to fill, so it's not really affecting the market too much. The dollar is looking like it has a small bounce that could be coming looking at this. So this might suggest there might be a small little dip coming to the markets, maybe some consolidation. But then if the dollar does not hold above 100, it could still dip lower. So we're going to be looking for a retest of 100 just to see how it reacts. And then I think that what's going to happen is the market trades sideways. We could even see like, the low 530s on SPY again, just a lot of sideways price action. But then ultimately, I do think there might be a bounce coming later on looking at the setups that we're seeing. Maybe President Trump is correct, and there is going to be a deal coming between different countries in the U.S. If he makes that announcement, this could help the market push, especially because he's saying that market is looking optimistic in his opinion. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some consolidation, some sideways price action for the time being. The market needs a breather for some time, so let that happen. And then later on, there's still some potential for upside, especially if we get some kind of deal between different countries like President Trump is talking about. All right, guys, so thank you for listening. Please have a good one. I'll be back with another update very soon. Please take care, enjoy your nights, and I'll be back very soon tomorrow before market open. Thank you for listening, and peace out.